Sorry, everybody. I'm sure you were determined to give up hope for this season, but it appears Liverpool were determined to keep hope alive. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name's Elliot. Think about me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Yeah, in the midst of it is so over, I found inside me the hint, the beginnings of an it's back on. It's one of those kind of weekends, isn't it? Gut punch, it's over. Was fully prepared to come on the pod and say, guys, I am declaring it over. And as much as it may still be over, Liverpool seemed hell-bent to decide it's back on. And in fact, of course, it's the giant oafish center back who has the chance to win it for United at the death. Not the guy you want that ball to fall to, although Joshua Zirkzee, can you not volley the ball to Maguire? Can you just roll it on the grass instead of bouncing it to him so he skies it over the bar? Actually, a super fun game between Liverpool and United. And Mohamed Salah today posting pictures in solidarity with Trent Alexander-Arnold on his social media. Rumors of bust-ups in the dressing room. Van Dijk having a go at Trent. It's all happening. The problem is we're not happening. So we just need us to happen because maybe, just maybe, it's all happening over there. I don't know. Too soon to say. But it certainly added a bit of spice to a weekend that otherwise I think was a bit of a downer. And once again left ruining our own lack of performance, our own lack of spark, some injustice from PGMOL. Then there's other games that are interesting. I think there's a lot to tease out of this. And yet we play again tomorrow. And this cadence of games every 36 hours for the next 24 months is hard. It's hard to keep up with. So we will indeed, of course, have an instant reaction after tomorrow's game. We're going to try to get you scouting videos this week. My guess is Friday, because when the heck are we even going to pull it off? By the way, I will say we are going to continue the 50% off first month of Patreon. I think, there are a lot of people that just want to check out what that's about. It's going to give you 5 or 6 things to listen to or watch every single week. So if you want it, it's $5 a month, which I think is reasonable, but $2.50 a month for the first month with code AVP. Had to change the code because the last one expired. AVP, all caps, AVP, ArsenalVision Podcast. AVP is a code, and you can do that for new signups, and we'll just keep that going because I think it's a nice way to give people an opportunity to see if it is indeed worth it. We think it is, but if you don't think it is, then, no harm, no foul. And either way, we're just happy you're here. Love you. Glad to be a part of this bizarre journey with you. And here to discuss the bizarre journey with me is Tim. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
And Clive. Hey, Clive.
Hello.
If you missed the instant reaction with Paul and Clive, we introduced a new member of the pod, which it's been a while since we did that. It is Dark Clive, I think Paul called him, or he wanted to call him Darius. We're accepting invitations. We're accepting suggestions for a name. I've seen Clyde. I've seen Clive Calmer, but it was Dark Clive because it was him saying all the angry opinions, all the wind-up opinions, all the things that the sensible Clive wouldn't say. So we need a name for him so we know when he has joined the show, but he is now a part of our family and we're happy to have him. So guys, I think we get it out of the way early. Well, let me do this before we even get that out of the way early. Let's get this out of the way. Tim, did the "it's so over" get sparked into a "it's back on" from watching Liverpool? How did that game change you? Because I went from a very low place, not to a very high place, but a very acceptable place in the wake of that game.
Yeah, a bit. I still have a sense, to be honest, that I've had for a little while that this just isn't going to be our season, and it's 6 points for the game in hand. That's a very long way back, especially without our best player, and I really think the Saka injury is the thing that's kind of killed my hope a little bit. But I was at submission. It's definitely not happening stage, and it's probably kept me in the very unlikely. But not quite giving up just yet, but very close, I think.
Yeah, it's tough because I'm trying to tell myself a story of maybe they're imploding a little bit. Maybe the Trent thing is having an impact on them. Manchester United can't score for toffee, but they created tons of chances in that game, I thought. And if you look at some of the recent scorelines with Liverpool, Spurs got 3, United got 2, Fulham got 2, Newcastle got 3. Maybe some of the balance of having 3 10s in midfield, right, is starting to show a little of the ability to create chances against them.
I think I was going to say, like, they've got some tricky games coming up. They've got Forest away, right, and then they go to Brentford and Bournemouth this month. We have to make good ground on them this month. We have to hope they drop points and that we don't in that time for sure. Michael Cox just brought a good article out as well about how United really, really went to expose their right-hand side, and not just Trent, because Salah doesn't come back, which has been a massive strength, as Clive, you kind of described quite well last week about how they don't bring Salah back, which means when the ball breaks, they've always got players forward. But United really played on that, and teams copy that kind of thing. So, I've never felt that Liverpool will completely keep up to a mid-90s point-wise, but the question is, if there's a drop-off, will it be enough? And will we be good enough to capitalise? That's where my doubts lie.
Well, that's really the thing. If I said to you, describe an Arsenal season where everything goes wrong and it winds up in failure, you'd sort of describe the season we're having. Odegaard to be out a long time, Saka be out a long time, Ben White to be out a long time. We get some really, really bad calls and really bad moments. The bounces don't go our way. That's how you draw up a bad season, not to mention, obviously, some mistakes of our own that we'll get to. And we're having it. And I think it actually says a lot about us that we find ourselves in a position to even discuss whether a title is something we can be hoping for this season, given the amount of things we're up against. But I'm with you, and this will come up as we get into the Brighton game. I don't think we have fully processed as a fan base what it means to lose your best player. And not just your best player, but your best attacking player in a team that was probably short, most notably, in that area of the pitch in terms of what we can do and the devastation we can create. So I think we're gonna have to take that medicine at some point and understand what that probably means. But Clive, I'll ask it to you just quickly then. I mean, I don't see a Liverpool that I think will run away with it, but I'm also aware of Tim's point that I'm not sure I see an Arsenal, that is in a position to reel in the gap based on what we're dealing with.
As we sit here today, Arsenal don't look fresh and fit and healthy, do we? So,
No.
so we can't see what we saw last year, 16 out of 18 games. We can't see that because we're not in shape, and the opportunity to reinvent ourselves is not there this time around. So we have to go and lean into more of who we are, which is a little bit lumpy and clumpy at the moment. I really did enjoy the Liverpool game on the weekend. Man United turned up. Remember who their badge, what the name of their badge said, and they started to play pretty decent. And the way they got out of defence, but didn't just kick it out to create up and down football, they played the way out with a little bit of composure. I thought it was really good. But once you break that first line consistently with quality, then you expose Liverpool's fullbacks. And I don't always enjoy Jamie Carragher analysing Arsenal, but he analysed Liverpool extremely well. He knows his team, and he knows they've got a problem at fullback. He knows Andy Robertson's hanging in. And basically, also, Konate came back from injury. I don't know if he was rushed back. He wasn't himself. He was never in line. And Trent all the issues that were the weekend, they weren't just Trent's fault. I thought Stephen Morlock did a great job on Sky this morning explaining it. And that right side was a problem between Konate and Trent, and there's no Jordan Henderson to come back. And that's my reason for being a naive, deluded Arsenal fan, still believe it's on. Because there is no Jordan Henderson to cover that right-hand side. There is no Wijnaldum to make sure he can cover the full-back areas. McAllister's on the edge. The referees haven't worked him out yet, amount of fouls he makes. And so they're on the edge in midfield. They're not strong enough. We've seen it. And I've seen that Liverpool team. I've sat there in awe and realised they're better than us. I know it's crazy. I know we could be 9 points behind. But I honestly don't feel they're better than us. But I just don't feel it. I felt their quality before. I just don't feel the same. I feel it's a bit more tenuous than people realise. It's massively on Van Dijk. It's massively on Salah's output. And we just got to stay in the room. How ugly it is. Just stay in the room and let this situation manifest itself.
Here's the problem, right? If you ask me, a full-strength Arsenal and a full-strength Liverpool go the rest of this season, how's the season end up? I say I give us every chance to overhaul them and be champions at the end of the season. But that's not the season we have. We have a full-strength Liverpool that every game puts out their first-choice 11, and an Arsenal that currently right now does not have its first choice right wing, its second choice right wing, its third choice 17-year-old central midfielder playing right wing. All of them are out. Right? It doesn't have three different defenders available. Martin Odegaard, too sick to play. Kai Havertz, too sick to play. And eventually, you have to take the medicine that talent determines outcomes more than anything else. And eventually, the talent isn't good enough. If I tell you Gabriel Martinelli, Leo Trossard, and Kai Havertz are going to be our starting front three for 90% of the remaining games this season, does that sound like a title-winning front three? I mean, to me, it doesn't. A Leo Trossard who's at 50% of his output this season and maybe slightly declining from that standpoint. A Gabriel Martinelli who has shown maybe his level from an output standpoint is a bit below what we had hoped. And a Kai Havertz who is certainly a serviceable, good, decent center forward, but I don't think a guy who's going to individually, brilliantly open up defenses for you. And we're asking those guys to produce the goals we need against a team that has, the best player in the world from an attacking standpoint and 7 other options they can put out next to him. So, I started from a it's so back and now I'm back to an it's so over. I think it's just the point that we are going to be talking a lot this season about games like the Brighton one where functionally things work okay, but at the pointy end of the pitch, there's just not enough happening. And I feel, unfortunately, the Ipswich game could have been the Brighton game. We could have gotten a dodgy penalty given against us at home to Ipswich and failed to win that game, right? Not because we were bad or we didn't dominate or we didn't control, but just the person that unlocks the door, that creates the goal, that wins the game, who's that person going to be, especially if Martin Odegaard can't get to the level. I think he will get to the level at some point, but he needs to get fit and healthy. The only chance we have, in my view, is a Martin Odegaard who gets to the level that he reached regularly last season. That's got to start. Because without that, Clive, if we don't get a Martin Odegaard back to that level, then we really are scraping around wondering where the chances and the goals are going to come from.
Yeah, I tend to agree. As you're talking, I was thinking, do we need to just get Odegaard and Havertz together up top end of the pitch and do that 4-2-4 thing, 4-4-2 thing, and just say our wide men are who they are. They're not going to get us the goals. They're not. They're hardworking, honest, high quality, high ability people that none of us know when those things are going to come true on the pitch. But what we can do, lean into their ability to join in and get onto the back post and things like that. And so that's what I would do in the short term. And I'd play my double pivot again. You know what I'm like. And when it comes to crunch time, that's what I tend to go with in my mind. But hey, look, let's get people healthy first. At this moment in time, that's the most bereft I've seen us for a long time, people-wise. And today, we don't just need people to get fit. We need a load of Beechams to get into those players. Do you know what I mean? And so we can get them healthy again. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, look, we created 0.9 expected goals in this game, and that's among the lowest we've had this season, including the games where we had 10 men. And you can get mad about it, or you can just look at the players we had on the pitch and recognize that sometimes it's about the talent. I want to get into the game. I want to give Nwaneri his flowers for his goal, obviously. I want to talk a little bit about what worked, what didn't. But I think at this point, it would be silly not to just get the penalty discussion out of the way. So let's do that. Tim, when you're bereft of players, when you're a little short to begin with because of transfer business, we can talk about that maybe. When players are out, especially your most important players, if you're going to accomplish stuff, the first thing you need is just a few things to go your way, right? You need a bit of the rub of the green. No one wins a title without the rub of the green a little bit, right? No one. Everyone who has won a title in the Premier League, something went right for them in a critical moment. And this season, it just feels like it's kind of going the other direction. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend we quote unquote deserve to win. I hate that though. Look, what is deserve to win, right? Football's a low scoring sport. We had gotten ourselves in front and we were doing what we do, whether you love it or you hate it. It's a high risk strategy. We'll come on to Clive's point about playing 2-0 football at 1-0. But this penalty, well, let me just throw it to you this way. What's your feeling on the penalty call itself?
Yeah, sure. So I'll preface this by saying in the ground I had absolutely no idea. It was miles away. It's up the other end of the stadium. I don't think any of the away supporters saw it at all, which actually I think might have changed the mood, because the mood was quite sour actually afterwards. And I think if that had happened at our end and we'd seen it, that might have been at least underscored by a little bit of a sense of injustice, maybe. I think it's a nonsense penalty. Hand on heart, I guess I can see why it's given, like clash of heads type thing. But half of my distaste for it is that I think Mikel Arteta's absolutely right when he says, "I've never seen one of those given. I've never seen. I don't know how many football matches I've been to and watched in my life, but it's well into the thousands, maybe even the tens of thousands. I can't think of a single time I saw a penalty given for that kind of incident, and therefore I have to believe that several hundred times I've seen a clash of heads in the area, and I just can't remember a time I've ever seen a penalty given that for that any level of football. I watch many levels of football. And so I don't see a precedent, which is not unusual. But also, it comes down to, this is more of a philosophical kind of thing about giving teams goals for nonsense. Like, and
Yes.
that's not about this as an isolated decision. It's something we talk about a lot, and therefore there's probably no need to rehash. But to give a team a goal for that, I'm sorry, it's just a complete nonsense, and the whole thing needs a rethink. And it's just symptomatic again of Howard Webb thinking that referees are actors on the stage, that they should be deciding outcomes. And I really wish there was some way to get the message through to him that is not what people want, because we don't have access to him, and the people that do, maybe certain channels that host his TV shows, won't tell him. They won't tell him. They won't relay that message. They're brick walling it, and there's a blockage, and there's a big separation, I think, between the head of the PGMOL with stars in his eyes and all of that, and an eye on a career in light entertainment and what people actually want. And there's a blockage there because the people with access to him are not talking to him, and it's ivory tower stuff. And we're getting games like this decided by Anthony Taylor, and I don't even blame Anthony Taylor that much, because I think that's what they're being told to do. And yeah, it's annoying.
Yeah, Dermot Gallagher came up with a new one that I'd not heard before. He said, Saliba didn't get the ball got him. Cool. Cool, mate. Nice turn of phrase. Makes no sense. Doesn't mean anything. I have a pretty strong take on this, as you'd imagine. But Clive, why don't you tell me what your thoughts are on the decision and its impact on us, and whether you think there's any justification for it?
Yes, I'm always honest, because when it happened, I had a deep intake of breath, because I thought, I know what these lot are like. They could do anything. It's like gunslingers. These referees can do anything. Do you know what I mean? And so, but I thought we'd be all right. And let's, as I watched the game again, I can see what Brighton were doing. They were lumping 4 up and going long, and they were playing in our half. And so who's to know? Let's be honest about this. They may have scored a goal later in the game anyway, because we'd run out of energy. We were running through quicksand. So, but this was unfortunate. The reason why it's unfortunate, let me just play it through for you. The way João Pedro gets the ball, and what he does, he doesn't control it. He flicks it up. Right? So he does it on purpose. He flicks it up to try to head it around. Right? And Saliba then thinks, okay, the ball's in the air. He's duty bound to go for it. He's allowed to go for that ball. So he goes for that ball, and João Pedro gets there first. And then, because they both challenge for it, as we've seen thousands of times, sometimes when two players put their head towards the ball, it does deflect off one or the other. That's part of the challenge. It's a challenge for the ball. They haven't left the ground, so I won't say aerial challenge, but it's a headed challenge for the ball, which you can get deflections, but as long as your intent is right, you should be okay. Now, if Saliba has had a harder hit on his head and had gone down, the referee would have brought the physios on and head clash in the box. He was right, and basically that would be the end of it, and no one would have said a word. But because Saliba just a bit more of a glancing blow, and Jared Pedro, who doesn't mind laying down on the floor like an actor, he played the situation very, very well. So what does Anthony Taylor do? He makes the assumption that Saliba is the aggressor. Now, with headed challenges, I've never seen really people use their head to aggressively challenge because your head's quite a sensitive space. No one really wants to get their head clashed. Do you know what I mean? It's quite a sensitive area. And so just when you have got the opportunity to get the benefit of the doubt, but he chose not to. And I thought, mate, that's a big call. That's a big call. That's big stuff, that is. Do you know what I mean? That really is. You know, why would you do that? Why would you make that call with such certainty? And then for me, VAR is VAR, but the process of VAR is what I tend to focus on. And for VAR to just see that off in 2.3 seconds just tells me, what are you doing, guys? Seriously, what are you doing? You're changing the course of the game. I'll say again, we weren't dominant. You know, particularly after they scored, we weren't dominant. That gave them a lift, right? They may have scored anyway, but it felt like, come on, that can't be how the game is. And probably the last time I felt like that was the Inter Milan handball. Felt a little bit like, oh, come on, guys. But there are hundreds of thousands of people have travelled out there to watch this game, and they're going home on a defeat for that type of handball. You know, and so this is where the game needs to look at itself, because a penalty is a huge event now in a game. It's a massive event, and we need to look at it as a whole. So that's why I'm on it. I'm over it. I'm not getting angry anymore. There's too much good things in the world and in life and in Arsenal. I'm not getting angry about this stuff. They're not going to drain me. They just can't. We can't let it drain us. We've got to focus on ourselves and what we need to do.
Yeah. So I have a few thoughts on this that I'll just get out as quickly as I can. The first is, I will admit in real time when I saw the first one, like you, Clive, I was like, uh-oh, he's headed him. The reverse angle is quite interesting, though. The reverse angle gives you a better sense that Saliba feels he can get to the ball and does, in fact, make some contact with the ball. And I've seen some people say it's not a clash of heads because they're not leaping into the air and going for the ball at the same time. João Pedro has headed the ball, and then Saliba has headed him. I would say it like this. Maybe it's a penalty, maybe it's not. No one listening to this podcast has ever seen that penalty given before. And it's just another example of a thing given against us that I've never seen given before. We've seen 3 different last man challenges this season that were clear as day, and only one of them a red card. Yesterday in the Liverpool United game, the clearest possible kicking the ball away from a free kick attempting to be retaken, no card. And here's the thing I want to be clear about. I don't want that to be a card. That would have been a dumb card. Now imagine it's a second card. These things distort football matches. And you know what? Arsenal are not a great attacking team, but you know what we are? We're a great defensive team. And we have to rely on that a bit because we're short up front. So the easiest way to take a game away from us is to give a penalty away, because it undermines the one thing we can lean on, which is the best defense in all of football, maybe in the world. So it is a major call. And I want to speak to Arsenal fans and say, well, we didn't deserve to win that game. You're probably right on the merits, but when did deserve ever matter? If deserve is what matters, let's organize the table by the XG goal difference table, and guess who would be top of it? Arsenal Football Club. So if you're going to tell me we didn't deserve to win this game, I want to tell you about the games we did deserve to win. Sometimes in football, you win games where you weren't at your best, where 7 starters are out, injured or ill, and you do just enough, and you rely on your structure and your organization and the incredible talent of a 17-year-old making an important breakthrough at a critical moment, and you ride your luck and you get away with it. But the real thing that bothers me about this is, to Clive's point, to Tim's point, this is a referee who wants to intervene. Whether you think that's a penalty or not, it surely doesn't have to be given. Why intervene there? When we watch Champions League, what do we always say? I didn't notice the ref. When he gave Nwaneri a yellow for time wasting in the first half, we currently have more yellows than anyone in the league for time wasting. Tell me that's not being ref differently. And I'll make a bet for you. I haven't looked this up, so someone look it up. I bet most of them are in the first half. Who's time wasting in the first half? Taking your time over a corner kick to get it right is not time wasting. It's not attempting to steal an advantage to kill the game. This is a referee who wanted to intervene, who wanted to be involved in the moment, and found a way to be involved in the moment. And if you watch him carefully, after it's done, he looks around a Brighton player and then points to the spot as if to say, did I see that? I don't think he saw it. So at least send him to the monitor. At least give him a chance. If he's honest, he can tell VAR, I didn't see it clearly. I think I know what I saw, but I didn't see it. And they can go, mate, have another look. It's close. And he can go look and see if it's what he thought. But he wants to intervene, and the VAR wants to rubber stamp it. And like I said, if you were sitting here listening going, Elliot, that's a penalty. It's certainly not a penalty you've ever seen before, and it is certainly the penalty of a referee who wants to be involved. And for me, Tim, this is really the issue. They don't want to be involved in serious foul play. They don't want to be involved when it's a straight red. We see that time and time and time and time again.
Well, João Pedro should not have been playing in this game.
Exactly.
Yeah, he should have been sent off in the prior game. He swung an elbow. He should be suspended for this game. He is not suspended for this game, and he scores the winner from the spot, and he's the one who's headed for the penalty. But Tim, it's to draw a line under this and finally move on, because we do have to be critical of Arsenal in this game, and there are plenty of reasons to be, and plenty of reasons to be critical in general. But the need for refs to make the critical intervention in a game, and in a low-scoring sport, making penalties this easy to give away distorts the game, especially for any team that wants to rest and rely on the strength of its defending, which, by the way, is part of the game. I know it's not the most fun part, but it counts. It matters. For years, we saw our seasons undone by not being able to do this. So to me, Tim, it's a shame, because whether you think it's defendable or not, it's not necessary. And referees are doing this too often, in my view.
Yeah, definitely. The litmus test is always, if it's not given, who says what happens. Like, I bet even Sky don't even bother looking at it afterwards, type thing. And that's what's quite annoying, especially about the gaslighting in the punditry and all of that. And like that, he gave him no choice. It's like, no, you know that's not true. You know you're not being honest. You're not being honest with yourself, and you're not being honest with your viewers when you say that. But if that's not given, nobody says anything. Like, it's completely forgettable as an incident. And when you see, Gabriel at a corner, and I think as well, there is a sense with Arsenal's corners that for some reason people think this is something that has to stop somehow, that it's like some kind of blight on the game, which is part of why Nwaneri gets booked, because the referee, how these guys get into these positions without doing just not like a 90-minute unconscious bias e-learning, guys, like, for fuck's sake. But he really allowed the crowd to kind of whip that up, and Arsenal score from loads of corners, we'll see about that, as if it's like bending the rules somehow. But then you see like the foul on Gabriel, and it's like do these guys not look back at this and think, Jesus, I gave a penalty for that, but not for that? Like, what am I doing? What am I thinking? Type thing. And like booking people from corners, it's just add the time on. The play is dead anyway. It's completely and utterly dead. Like, just add it on if it bothers you. But it's not about time wasting. Time is not being wasted. It's about sending a message that, Arsenal score loads of goals from corners, and this is something we have to stop. We'll see about that. We'll take them down a peg or two. And it's just nonsense. And that's why the coverage matters, unfortunately, because I'm sorry, these referees, they're just not smart enough to understand when they're being manipulated, because it doesn't seem to feature in their training. Like, just really basic media literacy stuff that most half-intelligent people know just doesn't seem to figure. And so, unfortunately, I do think this is a thing now, and all of those graphics that are being flashed up, which in and of itself, I kind of think is fine, because it's true, but it's like, Arsenal have had 9 bookings for time wasting. It's going to be loads more now, because maybe
because of reputation.
Yeah, and maybe to bring this back a bit, some of our players do have to be a bit smarter about it. When you've got the entire crowd screaming, and listen, I'm basically saying most referees are a bit dumb about this stuff, so I might as well level it at our players as well and just go, do you know what? Sometimes just understand the pitch and the atmosphere, and just fucking throw the ball and get rid of it, and don't worry about it. And then next time, like, maybe it will die down, type thing. So, annoying, but there we go.
I can't lie. The time we take over throw-ins does my head in too. But we're not time wasting per se. We're not trying to steal an advantage by killing the clock. Like that's not what we're doing. I want to start to draw a line under this and get to the game. But Clive, you have a final point?
Yeah, on the corners, I don't know if I'm repeating what Tim said, but I get this feeling that we have this unfair advantage because we've got these really tall players. And it's as though the bar for stopping us has just suddenly disappeared. So they can do what they like to us. And then we have to just deal with it. So we're not being refereed the same as everybody else would when it comes to contact in the box. And so we have to watch that one again now. How can we get around it? And on the corners and the throws, I debate over the weekend with somebody, and there are times I felt from Ben White times, why do we take so long? Particularly on the right-hand side, why do we take so long? A number of goals get scored from restarts. I'm not sure what the exact number is, but you don't want to. There's a reason why there's throwing coaches, right? You don't want to give the ball away when you're not in the right shape to defend it. And so, but I do feel the throw-ins are long. But the corners, I understand what we're trying to do. This is just event management. We're trying to create an event to bring tension to the area. Well, I know what we're trying to do. And so, what are you doing, referee? He held his hand up with the watch. Just let it go. But what he was doing was playing to the crowd. Playing to the crowd. I booked the 17-year-old. Playing to the crowd. But that has an impact later in the game. And people will say, we've got discipline issues. Do you see what I mean? And that's the sort of stuff that concerns me. So I do think we've got some work to do there, Elliot. I do agree with you.
Yeah.
But I find it frustrating how we are refereed slightly differently because of some of our strengths that we have, which I find strange.
I think that yellow card also is, to use a South Park reference, respect my authority. I think there is a bit of respect my authority culture among English referees. You will respect my authority, and you just don't see it in the Champions League because they don't care. They're just there to referee the game. English referees are there to be respected, to be the man running the match. And by the way, this thing about our corners and our size, I'll say this. I remember once upon a time when we had 11 techie little guys who ran around and had tech. Remember what they used to say about us? Do you remember? What they say about Arsenal in the 2010s? Arsenal don't like it up them. So we had a bunch of small technical players. Oh, do you remember? Was it Rosicki? Someone took a Panenka free penalty, and they said, that's cheating. That's embarrassing the opposition. Who is it? Cazorla. Yeah, it was Santi. That's right. And what they say, if that were me, I'd be kicking him after that. Now we have a bunch of big physical guys who are more physically dominant, and we're cheating. So you can't win. You just got to do what you want to do and hope it works out. And my final point on this is simply that I don't think we're good enough. But you know what? You send us to Brentford, and you send us to Brentford on New Year's Day. No one else had to do that. Brentford did. Then you send us to Brighton 2 days later. That's a tough stretch at Brentford, at Brighton. And you give us illness, and you give us injury. And what do? We try to gut our way through it. And we get 4 points from it, despite a crappy penalty. And it doesn't feel good because of our situation in the league, but I think it actually kind of reflects a bit of character, because 4 points from at Brentford, at Brighton in 3 days with no players, I think it's pretty good. And if you look at how we did it by relying a bit on our defensive strength, and Anthony Taylor didn't put the burden on Brighton to score. And I think this is the truth. If there's a 50-50 penalty that's not given, that doesn't destroy or distort a game in the same way as a 50-50 penalty that is given, because a goal is such a big impact. So it is what it is. We have to take that bitter pill and swallow it. And unfortunately, Everton, Fulham, Brighton. If we found our way through those games, and we really should have and could have, what would the title race look like right now? Liverpool have dropped points. Their pace is dropping off slightly. We just haven't been able to turn the screw. And, Tim, we went into this game very depleted. And I'm wondering, when you see that lineup, it's weird to me, right? Because you see that lineup and I go in the Discord and everyone's like, easy win today, boys. And I'm thinking, does anybody even care what players we put out? The thing that jumped out to me about that lineup, a few things. You get Thomas Partey at right back, and then 3 functional midfielders. That's maybe doing him disrespect, but not a lot of creativity.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. A teenager on the right.
It felt
Gabriel Jesus through the
to me.
Yeah, who's it just. I'm sorry, I looked at the lineup and I thought this is going to be a day we have to gut it out. So what was your reaction to that and the news that we had so few players available? Kai not even making the squad. Odegaard only fit enough for the bench. Martinelli only fit enough for the bench. Ethan getting his first start. What do you think?
Yeah, it felt a bit Bournemouth away to me, when you saw the lineup at Bournemouth away, and the same thing with the midfield. It was like, ooh, that's none of those are bad players, but it's just like I can't really see where the creativity is there. I have to admit, I didn't have the context about Odegaard and Martinelli until after the game. And I was quite harsh in the instant reaction, partially hadn't really seen the penalty, and partially because I didn't know that Odegaard and Martinelli were on the bench for that reason. I thought it was a bit of rotation, and actually I didn't massively balk at that, because it's like we could have to do that at some point, but I didn't realise it was the kind of the bug that's been going around. So yeah, I felt as ultimately what I felt was that it was going to be two quite functional teams, which is what we saw, because Brighton, their context is kind of similar. Actually, they've lost Welbeck, and their form has dipped a lot since losing him to injury. Their number of goals scored has dropped by about 50% in the time that he's been out of the team, because although Brighton have a lot of good attackers, and that thing, Clive, that you were describing about them kind of going long and looking for the knockdowns, they always do that. And actually quite a few clubs are doing that now. So you look at Forest, the way they play up to Chris Wood, and then they put legs around him. Palace do it with Mateta, and they put legs around him. And Brighton do it to Welbeck, and they have him as the hold-up player. And then they stick João Pedro, Mitoma, Minte, all number of attackers they've got around him. But they haven't been able to do it as well without Welbeck, because they don't have another player like that. And it's probably the same for us. We put Havertz up front, and we go long to him sometimes and then go on the outside, and actually both teams had lost probably their target man, as it were. And I guess that's the other thing that's quite frustrating, because at 1-0 I could see us seeing the game out on the basis that Brighton had kind of been struggling for goals recently. But yeah, definitely, look, the bare facts of this: we started a 17-year-old on the right wing who hasn't really ever played there before, and he had to come off injured at half time. How's your luck at that point? 3 right backs gone, 3 right wingers gone, your best creative player, another winger gone. Your two, Saka and Havertz, that's where a lot of our goals come from. Those are our 2 top scorers, over the last year. So, and then on top of that, you don't have your best creator. And to be fair, some people would say maybe our only creator, and maybe that's deficiency in the squad, that we don't have enough creative talent. So, it always felt to me like it would be a grind, and it would be particularly so hot on the heels of Brentford that it would be a let's try and do this 1-0 and get out of there, which I think we did try to do. I'm sure we'll discuss this. I just think we called the dogs off too early.
Yeah, I think we did, and we'll get to that. But Clive, I look at that midfield, and for me, it all starts from there, because I don't think we have enough quality in the forward line right now. I can sort of excuse when you lose your best attacking player, who's Bukayo Saka, you're not going to have enough quality in the attack line. When you lose your best creative player and attacking midfielder, Martin Odegaard, you're going to be weaker. But we have really prioritized the athleticism and the physicality of our midfield, and not necessarily opted to go for the last action, the player that can provide something special for another player. Maybe Mikel Merino is the last action player in a way, because he can get on the end of something. Although we did have an assist in this game, right? There were very mixed reactions to his performance, which I think is an interesting one to break down. But when you look at that group, what stood out to me as missing is the player that can turn final third possession into final third chances. I'm curious what you thought of, what we had out there available to us.
It wasn't enough, was it? It's not even a debate, right? So let's just go through our front 6, right? Let's just go through what we decided the season with. So Trossard, his output's down, right? He's had an indifferent season so far, this season. He cost us the red card, maybe cost us the 3 points. Liverpool, when he passes backwards, mate, I tense up. He does dumb stuff when he's going backwards. So he's gone very 50-50. And Elliot, one of your lines around new contracts, You give contracts to people on what they're going to do, not what they've done. So that's the situation I'd be looking at really closely if I was a club. Jesus, mate, Boxer Rebels. Well, what are we going to get? 1 minute, unbelievable. This game when we needed him, couldn't find him with a torch. Just couldn't find him, right? So can you win the league with Gabriel Jesus as your centre forward playing every 3 days? Don't answer, because I know the answer, right? So Kai Havertz, top scorer, too lackadaisical for some. I give him support because actually he does the business. I'm sorry for that, right? But he does the business. And yeah, he might not suit everyone's eye, but he produces, right? So the only issue I have with him is he has to produce because he hasn't got the support around him to allow him to rotate and rest, because the guy that allows him to rotate and rest, as though he turns out against Crystal Palace, right? So there's that one. Then you go into Bukayo Saka, who just a round of applause there, thank you, but he got injured. Gabriel Martinelli, hot shot. 15 and 10 a little while ago? Or 15 goals for definite. Let's be honest, he's dropped away a little bit. We all try to support him. We want him to be better. There's a lot of pressure on him. He's experienced. He played 150 games for Arsenal in the top end of the league. So, I'm sorry. Now the light is on you, like it is Jesus, you have to show, right? So obviously this game is not, because I believe he was ill for this game as well, and he didn't look himself at all when he came on. And I think it's very difficult to be critical of players, because there are some heroes there that turn themselves out when they probably know they're going to get not at their best. So, and we're not close enough to really understand that. And that's where we are, and that's our front six, right? And I don't think it's enough. I didn't mention Sterling. Sorry, I didn't mention Sterling. Again, that was a situation to allow other people to go out and play. We bring in somebody that's experienced. Come the moment when we need him, he's got an injury. Unfortunate, unlucky, but that's just where we are at the moment, and we don't have enough. So how are we going to do this? How are we going to provide solutions? What are we going to do? And I always try to look at the solutions internally, what we can do, move people around. When it comes down to it, your forward line has to make the opposition scared. And this game was really indicative where they lost fear of us once we stopped running in beyond, because we had no one to do it. And the way it translated to Tim in the ground was, we called the dogs off, mate. Our dogs didn't want to run forward anymore, basically. We had no forward targets. We had nobody in those areas. We had no one to play to. We had no forward direction. And it's a real worry, because this team is a really good side. It's extremely well coached, almost above its abilities. But in the end, you need to scare people. And our scary player is injured. And the rest are not scary enough, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, every great team has a great player that takes them from very, very good to great, or a couple. And you say, as long as they got that couple of players, they're great. And you can move the pieces around, but you can't take those guys out. You know who it is at Liverpool? Salah and Van Dijk. You can't take those guys out. They're not going to be great without them. At City, it was pretty obvious, right? Haaland, De Bruyne, or Rodri. De Bruyne has faded and been unfit. Rodri's out. They're not great anymore. At Arsenal, Saka, Odegaard, Saliba would be the 3 that I'd say. Can't be great without them. We've played most of this season without one or both of them. Expect to be great. And I do want to say something to the people that say, well, we caused the injuries. That's such a convenient thing to say in a way. Did we cause Nwaneri's injury? Did we cause Sterling's injury? Did we cause Odegaard to get a bad tackle playing for Norway? I understand people get frustrated. Too many minutes. Sometimes I think predicting injuries is like, have you ever heard the saying, I've correctly predicted 3 of the last 12 recessions? Right? It's the idea that if you keep saying recession is coming, the market's going to bottom out, recession's coming, the market's going to bottom out, it will eventually do that. And then you will say, I told you. If you keep predicting that someone's going to be injured because they play football, eventually they will get injured because they play football, and you will be right. But if you compare our use of Saka, for example, to the way other teams use players like Haaland or Salah, it lines up. And by the way, I don't hear a lot of people saying, sit down William Saliba. It's just one of those things. Injury happens. But I don't know that we can blame ourselves. I certainly think we can blame ourselves for not having more robust options around, not to protect from injury, but to protect when injury. That's a different story. Tim, obviously the story of this game, the one real bright spot of this game is Ethan Nwaneri. There's a play up the right-hand side. Thomas Partey does brilliantly to get out. Mikel Merino, who I have to admit, I'm still very, very mixed on this player, but a few extra touches, gives it back, then gets it back, then does the right thing. A quick ball through a very broken and out of shape Brighton defensive line. Both Rice and Nwaneri are in. Nwaneri takes it himself, hits it early, gets his luck under the keeper. It's a goal. It's a huge moment for the 17-year-old. In a season that hasn't given us a lot of high moments, it's one of the higher moments I've felt this season. I loved it for him. In a way, I think it changed his performance. Ironically, I think after that, he started to maybe do a little too much. He was trying to beat his man every time with really exceptional pieces of skill, and Estupiñán, I think, sort of was onto him a bit. But what a great, great moment for Ethan, and how'd that feel in the away end? And I mean, it must have been a special moment for you.
Yeah, definitely. Again, quite difficult to see. The gradient is not brilliant. Brighton, you're kind of at pitch level, pretty much wherever you're sitting. So it was like, was that Nwaneri scored? Was that it? So we couldn't really, and particularly because of the nature of the goal, where the goalkeeper gets a touch on it, I didn't know if he'd crossed it for someone else. But yeah, and there are some things I love about the goal, which I don't really know how to put this in other contexts. I might be not critical, that's going too far, but like there's a lot of impudence of youth in that goal, because I don't think the pass is intended for him. I think it's intended for Rice, and I love the fact that he takes it, that he doesn't defer. Actually, when he's 2 or 3 years older and maybe he's more comfortable in the team and he's a fixture, he might, and it wouldn't be deferring. It would just be, oh, okay, I can go into the box. But like, he's so eager. And actually, at the moment, particularly with the situation we're in with our attackers, we need a bit of eagerness. So, like, stuff like, him kind of taking the ball off Rice, which I think is fine, by the way, and then taking the shot on when perhaps the pass is there. Those are things that, like, hypercritical. Someone like Carlos Cuesta with the iPad, right now might be going, That's good, Ethan, but actually, normally in this situation, maybe you go for the cutback or whatever. But in the situation Arsenal are in, and with his kind of level of age and experience and everything, I love the fact that he takes that. I love the fact that he's like, nope, ball's mine, and he's got one thing in his mind throughout. And like I said, like, if we had other players like that. Like, for example, I don't know if you remember, like, when Van Persie was coming through and Henry was there, and I always just got that little sense of Henry, bit like, even though he was a very unselfish player, I did think there were times, when Van Persie was coming in where he's a bit like, I'm the one that does the tricks and the volleys here, mate, type thing. Like, I think that kind of thing mattered to Henry, that sense of hierarchy and seniority. And by the way, I felt it mattered to him when he was on the other end of it, and the way he talks about it. I think, whereas, so like, if we had another player like that in the team, maybe you'd be like, okay, but we don't. Like, Clive's just been through the other attackers there, and who else would do that? In that moment, like, and so taking that level of initiative, and it just all seems to be coming quite easily to him, like Carabao Cup, spank a few past Bolton and Preston, make it very, very clear that is a long way below my level. Now scoring, I forgot that was his second Premier League goal, and it just makes me, I'm just so fascinated to see where on the pitch he ends up, because I know Arteta's talked up, I think he could be a 9 because he's good in front of goal. And I just think one of the things for Nwaneri is, like, he's not going to develop as a right winger cleaning Saka's boots. He's probably not going to develop as the right 8 cleaning Erdegaard's. Like, I kind of feel like left 8 and centre forward, those are the positions you'd probably really like to develop him into, because that's where the gaps are in the team. A bit like what we've done with Lewis Skelly, where it's like, actually, there's quite a lot of players in midfield at the moment. They're not going to be there forever. But you know what we do need? We need an inverting left back. So that's where we're going to put you. I really like when teams do that, when they take their talented young players and they look at where the gaps are in the team. So I think it's a really promising goal for him as a right winger as well, because that's where he takes it from. But it's just so clear that it's not going to be very long before we're going to be having long, boring conversations about how much football this guy's playing.
Just an exceptional talent at 17 to be doing what he's doing. The thing I would say, Clive, is we've become so structure-pilled too. that I found myself being like, oh, he's giving the ball away a bit, or his dribbles aren't totally coming off. And it's like, well, someone's got to do it. Someone's got to do it. And he's taking the responsibility. He did lose the ball a bit in our own half. And we're so structure-built. We're like, well, can't do that for a Mikel Arteta team. Well, guess what? So there's got to be dynamism somewhere. He's not Bukayo Saka, so it's not coming off as much because he's 17 years old, but he's doing it. And I think maybe in being so structure-built, I kind of missed in the moment the impressiveness of a 17-year-old having the courage and confidence away at Brighton to be the guy to try to make something happen in a team that was otherwise mainly functional. So it's not just his goal and the courage to take it there, because I'll tell you, if he doesn't score there, we're going to be having the old tedious, should he have passed it conversation. He has the personality where he wants to be the guy who makes the critical contribution. I think he will figure out the right balance, and he will get better at it as he gets older. But the talent jumps off the screen, jumps off the pitch, you know?
Yeah, he's doing a great job for the team in a team's moment of need, shall we say?
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And the more times he plays, the better he'll be. He's a work in progress right in front of us. He's 17. I believe he may have scored 5 goals for the first team. So
It's crazy.
So, we have problems in our club. He ain't one of them, mate. I tell you that for nothing. Whether he plays a square pass or not, that ain't a problem. That's just him. He's learning in front of us, and he's got a very. I use this word all the time. He's got a heavy foot, mate. He kicks that ball properly. He hits it, and he knows what he's doing on the pitch. He has a really straightforward personality to drive into areas and to really threaten the goal. And we could do with some of that, couldn't we? Because we are such a combination heavy, pass heavy, in the pocket team. And we're so collaborative. We create for others. I like the fact he's got a bit of devil about him when he sees his responsibility to score. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how he develops physically. He's still got some growing to do. He's very young. But if he grows and he can have, I think, I'm not saying Havertz growth. I'm just talking a little bit of more physicality. But maybe he's going to be a pocket player. Maybe that's what he's going to be. And maybe the left 8 or the right 8 will be his interior role, because he's very good in those tight spaces. He can beat people, and he's a threat on the other side. So right wing, just do the job for us, right? He's the right body orientation to receive it, come inside and create combinations. He's got the legs that Odegaard hasn't got at this stage of his. He's not that player. He's much more in the interior. So if Odegaard, when he was really, really young, he spent time on the right wing as well. So it's what it is, Elliot. Ethan Nwaneri, it's just going to be we're so lucky to have 2 players in the same academy year come out pretty local to the club. When you think of the game today, how global it is, how many different countries that are during our Premier League, and we've got 2 London boys that are Champions League quality, that are 17 and 18. That's something freakish. I don't think we really understand how freakish that is. And they're going to probably end up playing for their countries. It's incredible, isn't it? And we were just very lucky to have them.
I mean, if you told anyone in the summer that we would be playing an 18-year-old at left back quite a bit this season and a 17-year-old at right wing, we would have been like shaking our head in disbelief. Like, we've got 40 left backs. That's not going to happen. We've got forwards. Maybe we're not all happy with the options we have, but we've got options. And we've had to rely on these kids, and these kids have been very, very impressive. More impressive maybe than some handsomely paid, expensively acquired players. So yeah, kudos to them. I want to talk about the way we approached the game once we were 1-0 up. And I want to talk a little bit about, I think, some polarizing performances and players a bit. I want to look ahead as well, and to the January window. So still quite a bit to get to in the time we have left. I will just tell you quickly that this podcast is sponsored by Indeed. They're back. Indeed. This is the sponsor that made the whole thing that Clive and I do, our bit at the end of the ad read. So come on, we're glad they're back. Look, it's really this simple. You are hiring. If you're not hiring, just pretend you're hiring for a minute. We're going to role play. You're hiring. You're hiring. And you're like, oh, you know what? I'll just do the smart thing. I'll log on to 42 different websites. I'll post my job on 42 different websites. I'll spend my day checking 42 different websites. And I'll hope to, oh no, maybe I won't do that. Maybe you'll use one site that lets you do it all, that has a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Where 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. So Indeed is about saving you time, but it's also about getting you the right quality candidate. So people can apply to jobs and find the right job, and hiring organizations can spend their time meeting with and selecting the best talent instead of browsing multiple websites. Leveraging 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. And you can join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. All you have to do, listeners to this show, will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility to Indeed.com/ArsenalVision. Just go to Indeed.com/ArsenalVision right now and support our show by saying you heard about it here on the podcast. Indeed.com/ArsenalVision. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. You need to. Is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Nailed it. It's good to be back. It's good to be back. Tim, it's not good to play 2-0 football at 1-0, as Clive has said. But that feels like what we did, and Mikel Arteta seems to agree with that. In his post-match comments, he said that we did not do enough. That we did enough defensively, but in the other end, we didn't. Is it, I guess what I would say is, was it a lack of a desire to do more or a lack of an ability to do more? I do think that, especially in the second half, we really sat off. We really were passive. I don't think Martinelli on the right helped. I don't think we were able to change it from the bench, obviously, which doesn't help. What are your thoughts on the way we played from 1-0 and whether we intentionally maybe chose to sit off too much?
I do think, there are obvious caveats here, about how tired everyone was, and the attack just losing so much personnel that, of course, we're not going to look the same. I definitely think we did sit back, but it's difficult to know whether that's a conscious or an unconscious thing. Is that a right? Let's sit. I'm sure that they didn't want to do that as early as they did, which leads me to think it was probably unconscious. I'm sure that even if they had the discussion before the game about managing the game a bit, because they called the dogs up against Brentford as well, right? But they were 3-1 up with 25 minutes to go, and that's very different than trying to do it at 1-0 on 35, 40 minutes. So I definitely don't believe they wanted to do that, and therefore I think fatigue has to have been a big part of it. And then when you lose Nwaneri at half time as well, what little legs you do have on the pitch, and the one player who perhaps is quite fresh because he hasn't played loads and loads of football this year, goes off injured. And maybe that, we talk about, overplay and all of that with Saka and some of the injuries we have. Well, I think if you're going to say that, you have to also concede that maybe this is why we've been managing Nwaneri as well. If you got a muscular issue, was that his second Premier League start? 45 minutes gets a muscular issue. If you're going to use that argument for some of our players being injured, then I think you have to take it on the other side if you're being intellectually honest and say that's probably a part of the reason that Nwaneri was being a bit protected maybe a few weeks and months ago. So there's definitely a bit of that. I do think, we've drawn 7 games this season. That's already more than the last 2 seasons. I think we drew 5 last year. We've already drawn 7. And what does that tell you? That tells you basically that those draws tell the story of our season. A couple of them have been down to just inexplicable refereeing decisions. Some of them have been down to a lack of firepower. I think Chelsea away. I came out, I said, on the post-Chelsea pod, it felt like a defeat to me because I thought we had them. I thought we had them pinned back, scared, but we couldn't capitalise. Fulham, same deal. Everton, same deal. So there have been those draws where we just haven't had enough firepower. But I think in the aggregate, there is also a sense that sometimes we do that too early, and that we sense that's where the strength is in our team. That's where the players are in our team as well. We can actually make usually we can make substitutions for our fullbacks and things like that. And imagine that when Ben White's back again, and we can 70-20 White and Timber and stuff like that, and maybe do the same with Calafiori and Lewis Skelly and all of that. And we couldn't do any of that. So I think it's so difficult to tell, but there's something in the aggregate of all of these draws that partially, injuries, inexplicable decisions, partially, though, I do think there is something about this team where they do sit in, and maybe it's justifiable because that's where the majority of their talent is. But I still do come out of this game with the feeling that they did that too early. And I think I think the other reason I'd say it's probably subconscious as well is, like, Brighton didn't equalise in the 85th minute or the 88th minute. We had quite a lot of time to go and score another goal and attack them and pin them back, and it just didn't really happen. And that, I think, leads me to believe that it's probably just a lot about fatigue and not being able to change gears. Because I think maybe there was a bit of Arsenal that were happy to win this game 1-0. I don't believe they wanted to draw it 1-1.
Yeah. I mean, there's two things I want to say about this. First is you have to realize that talent and available qualities in players influences what you see on the pitch. If you have dynamic dribbling forwards and progressive passing mavens who are between the lines geniuses, you're going to see something very different than when you have Rice, Marino, Jorginho, right? Then when you have Partey playing right back, you don't have an overlapping fullback. When you have Martinelli on the wrong side where he didn't look effective. Martin Odegaard, this is staggering. Martin Odegaard had 7 touches in his appearance. He played 4 completed passes. That is not a fit. Whatever you think of his form right now, that's not a fit Martin Odegaard. So you're doing what you can with the players that you have out there. I also want to be honest. Everybody praises Liverpool's attack. Did you watch that game against United? Towards the end there, what were they doing? They were holding on with their lead. Sometimes games are weird. Sometimes you have a lead and you find yourself just protecting it a bit against a team that's trying to attack you. And if you're Arsenal and you have no attackers and you're the best defense in the league, it's not the worst thing in the world to try to protect it. But I do think we tried to do it too long, right? Because you just, people hate the word variance, but a dumb penalty, a ball that bounces in the wrong way, you have to maintain your threat. The question is, Clive, did we fail to maintain our threat because we didn't try to, or because we just lacked the players who could? I felt that Jesus kept dropping too deep because he didn't have the support between the lines. So then he was coming back to get it. Especially when Martinelli came on, I thought he really struggled to influence the game. Even if Nwaneri was a little sloppy, he gave us threat going forward. And we got very, very little from Trossard, who vanished in the second half as well. You want to do age curve stuff, be my guest. But this felt like a case of the players not being able to maintain the threat, maybe more than deciding not to maintain the threat, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. My headline, I thought about it after. I thought maybe that wasn't fair, just based on things that we don't know, just the health and fitness of the group that we have out there, and I think it's just unfair. It's not. This isn't our team at the moment. Our first 4 of our 6 strikers are not there, right? So and so this isn't the team that we know. And when you're avid watchers like we all are, when you see Declan Rice running back in centre midfield, his head is nodding like a nodding dog because he can't quite catch up. That's not Declan Rice. When he's fit and he's on top form, he just catches them up. So I'm not watching things. There are rumours of Marino being ill, Miles Lewis Skelly being ill, Martinelli being ill, Odegaard being ill. How can I, draw any conclusions over this? It's just very frustrating that we're matching Liverpool stride for stride. When they're dropping points, we drop them too. And it's adding to the frustration. But the thing that concerns me the most is when we did our big run last season, we were able to reinvent ourselves on the back of some freshness. And I don't see the freshness, and I don't see where the reinvention going to come from internal solutions. If you add into last year's scenario, we did quite well in 2024, particularly at the start of the year. If you add in a 2-legged Carling Cup semi-final, and you add in 2 extra Champions League games into this fatigue group, this is why people are frustrated, because they can see the future. If you add in our best player, who's in my opinion is world class, he's not available for 2 months during what these are, just add it all up and say to yourself, we could do well to come through this. We really are.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't want to say it, but we got to add. We got to add to the group. If we're serious about what we need to achieve, we got to add to the group. We do.
Yeah, let's finish with that, Clive, because that's definitely something I want to make sure we finish with before we get out of here. But I do want to say that, like, if I told you before the season we played 2.5 months without Odegaard, potentially 4 or 5 months without Saka, that Sterling would basically not factor, that Ben White would have knee surgery, and I asked you to reevaluate where we'd be in the league, you said, well, under those circumstances, maybe we're just clinging to top 4. Now, your expectation would be that City would run away with it, and City not running away with it has changed how we all feel. We all feel entitled to catch Liverpool in a way we would, like, if it was City, and think about this for a minute. Let's say Liverpool were 7th and City were 1st right now. What would our attitude be? We would probably be saying, we've done so well to even be in this at all. But City not being in it, I think, has made us all feel like this was our season and we've blown it, and maybe taken some of the attention off the fact that, to the extent we've blown it, I'm willing to listen to arguments for that. But we also are trying to do it with 2 hands and a leg tied behind our back due to injuries and stuff. And to Clive's point, we'll talk recruitment in a moment, but I want to talk about one polarizing player. Mikel Merino probably had our best chance to win it, to be honest. Declan Rice put in a sensational free kick, in swinging sort of curl or low across the floor. Merino got there just slightly late and it pushes it wide. I can't be too mad at him. I don't think it's an easy chance. I just think it's such a great delivery. It almost deserves a goal. And once again, set pieces seemed like our best route through. We had some headers that just didn't come off. Partey had one, but I mean, it's hard. It's 12 yards out. He's rising late. There were moments, but only half moments. The Merino thing is one that's interesting, Tim, because in a way, he had the assist. He did some of the things, the rare things we did that kept us moving forward. At other times, I think he looked a little slow. I think he looked a little ponderous. He's a player that I think people are struggling to really analyze. And I find myself struggling with that as well. I think Paul said this really well. I'm mad at a plumber for not being an electrician. You know what I mean? He said that. And I think that's correct. I'm frustrated with Merino for not being an Eze, right? And Eze is just a name. It could be an Olise, whoever it is. But that's not Merino's fault. We chose this profile. I think we also thought 28, Spain international, experienced professional, played in the Champions League, is going to come in, hit the ground running, give us a very big option right off the bat. He got injured. It's been mix and match midfields. Rice's role keeps changing. Kai's role keeps changing. He's in, he's out. Odegaard's in and out. And so all of those things are caveats. And I still struggle to warm to the profile we chose, because I do feel that we left ourselves short of players who can work their magic a little bit in the most important area of the pitch. How are you finding your analysis of this player forming? Because he actually did create our one goal in this game, if we're being fair to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when I think about that left 8 role since Saka went up, that role stepped up. There's been a goal contribution in every game from either Havertz or Merino in that role. So, albeit when Merino actually gets that assist from, and look, we call it an assist, and it is an assist, but there's a lot of work that's done after that. So I don't want to go overboard on that. But like I said the other day, I see it as an output role. I see this really as a kind of a repeat of the discussions we had around Xhaka, maybe for a couple of seasons, where there's always going to be that, the player he is versus the player you want him to be. So I'm kind of all right with it. Like I agree with you. I don't think there's enough overall creativity without Odegaard, and that's kind of brought into sharper focus by the absence of Saka as well, because he's our second most creative player after that. So it's a bit of a strange one, but I'm okay with it. He has the chance to score the winner from the set piece, which, if he scores that, it's probably a different conversation, like I said, because it just seems to me to be quite an output role. But I think probably the reason I'm a bit more sanguine about it than you, Elliot, is I don't do that thing that tortures you, like thinking too much. I kind of I think I accept what this role is when I look at the guys that Arteta plays there, right? And it's Xhaka, then he bought Havertz, then he bought Marino, and Emile Smith-Rowe's gone, and Fabio Vieira's out on loan. So I think I know what he wants there. And I'm with you that there isn't enough overall creativity, but I think that's probably a function of our left winger not really doing it at the moment. That's not just a goals role, that's a goals and assists role, and there isn't much creativity coming from that side, quite frankly, as well. So there's a little bit of that going on as well. So I'm kind of okay with the player. Like I don't feel frustrated with him. I didn't feel that in the ground, but I guess that's also because like I'm an anxious watcher, right? I'm very anxious when I watch Arsenal, and I want security, really. So like actually seeing a guy like that who does look after the ball, maybe he doesn't split defenses open with it and stuff like that, but he's big, he's strong, he looks after the ball pretty well. He's Spanish international, like he can look after the ball, like, and so maybe there's just a sense that like it doesn't flick my anxiety switch too much seeing him try to do certain things. But and I don't know what that balance would look like if we had like Erdegaard and another, like, this could be a question we're asking very soon, like Erdegaard and Nwaneri, like how does that balance look? Does that leave us short in a particular way? I guess if I was going to have a reservation, I'd say that in terms of balance, I think if you've already got Rice, like maybe there is less need for, more, I'm going to call it muscle for the sake of brevity in midfield. Maybe you can say, do you know what? We've got Declan Rice there. Let's have two creators, like, because he can take it. And for the 5 or 6 games a season where we don't want that, then yeah, we can put someone else there, like, or we can play Rice left 8 and put Partey or Jorginho behind him. So maybe there is an overall balance question there, but I think we really have to get to grips with what this left 8 role actually is and what Arteta wants from it, and maybe some of the stuff that we don't either see or don't venerate that much that Arteta really values to the way the team functions.
Clive?
Yeah, it's a long discussion about the left there. I agree with a lot what Tim said there. I think I look at Arsenal and I look at our issues and I put them in order of priority. And Marino's not at the top of my list of issues, right? So, but he almost manifests some people's view because he's the last man in, and we could have had maybe a different player. We'd have bought a different player, and so that's what people think. Personally, in that role, I like a right-footed box-to-box player. That's what I'd like. Someone who can shoot from the edge of the area. We seem to have settled on 3 lefties in Havertz, Marino, and Xhaka. I quite like the right footer there. I quite like, obviously Jude Bellingham would have been perfect, but I mean, that sort of profile player, someone who can drive, but then when he gets to the edge of the area, he's on his right foot. The other guy's on his left foot. I quite like the inversion of that role. I was quite pleased to see the links to Jude Bellingham's brother, actually. I'm not sure of his actual level, but I really like that type of player there. And it's what we all like, what we like, don't we? Elliot, you like what you like in that position. It's absolutely fine.
I sure do.
It's absolutely fine. It really is. But I do like it in that more energetic box-to-box collision role. And that's my criticism of Mourinho. So I watched the first 10 minutes closely, and he sometimes feels 1 yard off on the press, 1 yard off on the recovery. That's what's missing at the moment, and that could be his adaptation, right? So as when you get to the ball quicker, you have more time on the ball to play. I think he's actually a really good player, but he's not creating time for himself because he's not quite fit enough yet. And there was a moment in the game when the camera panned to him and he was hands on knees blowing, right? Now, we all know, because we've got context, and we know how his summer went. He spent half of it on top of an open-top bus drinking champagne, right? And then, as soon as he arrived at Arsenal after a protracted arrival, we smashed his shoulder in his first training session, right? So he hasn't had the preparation other people have had. you know. And so you put that alongside the fact that Declan Rice has also been in and out with fitness and health and ability to re-find himself. And then we're in a situation where our skipper's been out, and we've got a situation where the 31-year-old, the last year of his contract, Thomas Partey, is our best midfielder, and none of us saw that at the start of the season. And so we just have to let this one go, give him time to adapt, right, to this situation. But he's not top of my list, mate, at the moment. He's not, he's been here 2 minutes. He's on top of my list. There are other things that need to happen before we start throwing him out,
Yeah. I mean, it can be true that Marino is a good player to have in the group and a player that will be very valuable for us. And also true that we needed another midfield signing who is more of the attack-oriented, lock-picking variety. I mean, you let go of Fabio Vieira, fine. Do it. What really was he for us? You let go of Emil Smith-Rowe, fine. He has to go start his career. Fair enough. But you have left yourself Martin Odegaard, who kind of has to do everything, back to front, to final third, to shots, to creation, all that. And no one else who really does any of it. And so maybe it's not so much that Mikel Merino is the issue. To your point, Clive, it's that we didn't have that other thing. I think a big issue in this game too is that for the first time, I can honestly say Jorginho looked past it. He looked real old and he couldn't run backwards. But the thing that blows me away, the whole thing with Jorginho, this is a guy who for us has made 10 progressive passes per 90, 8 final third entries. What does he do in this game? 3 progressive passes, 4 passes into the final third. He wasn't even doing the Jorginho things that he needs to do because he can't turn it quick enough. He has lost the athleticism to play at this level, I think. And I was definitely someone who was wondering, well, why doesn't Jorginho play? It's part of every game. He needs some rest. Let's play Jorginho. I think you see now he's not a starting Premier League player with the level of athleticism he has right now, at least not in a game where that midfield's going to be contested at all. So it is a tough one. I think with Mikel Merino, my take on it is simply, if you want my honesty, I can tell you what you want to hear. I can tell you my honesty. Eye test right now, when I look at him, I don't see it yet. I don't go, wow. I don't see those moments where I'm really impressed. I know there are other people that like what he does and still think the USPs there are going to come to the fore. I know against Brentford, he won possession back in the final third more than anybody has won this season in the Premier League. I get all the stuff. I can only tell you what I see. For me, I see a functional squad player. And you need functional squad players, by the way. And he's a player who could be very valuable. I think our first choice midfield is still probably Partey, Rice, and Odegaard at this moment. But you don't always get to play your first choice. And we know that all too well. Marino came into this game and created the goal that could have won it for us. So I want to be careful about drawing conclusions. I will say this, since the penalty was awarded against him, I thought Saliba was phenomenal in this game. And in a game where Jorginho wasn't progressing the ball, our 2 biggest progressive passers in this game, in terms of final third entries, were Gabriel and Saliba. They took on a lot of responsibility. William Saliba was cleaning things up. He was passing the ball. What did he and Gabriel do? 93, 94% passing. Saliba attempted 79 passes, completed 75 of them. He is just our rock back there. David Raya, again, handling the ball well. So, I think some of the players at the backside of the pitch were good, and we're unfortunate that it wasn't enough to just get us over the line.
Can I hold you on the 6th
please.
conversation,
Mm-hmm.
Elliot? I think the 6th role, to be fair to Jorginho, because I think he didn't have his forward targets to hit. I think he would hit them if they were there. But also, I think the 6th role has slightly changed. When we're dominating possession, I think the 6th role is slightly higher. And it needs to be quite aggressive. I think Rice and Partey do it really well. They go in. They always succeed, but they go in hard. And they can create the second wave attack. This is what we missed in this game. We weren't able to keep people there. Because if the 6 has to push in, they were going past him. Once they go past him, then we can all see from our widescreen TVs that running is not his strength. But we've always known that. So his best games are in compact situations where he can rat-a-tat round in a small space. I like to be fair to players. I don't think this game suited him. And he should have been out of there at half-time, if I'm honest with you, because the way the game was panning out and the fact they were going long. They did this in the home game. And so the situation was telling us what to do, and we didn't learn very well. I'd like to see a change there, and I'd like to see a little bit more. I'd like to see Rice come back, and Rice was playing the Odegaard role in this game, And the reason why we did that, we learned from Bournemouth. You can't have Mourinho in the front two press because he's not really sharp enough to go and do it. But once we stop pressing, then get him back to make sure we win the second ball so they don't get ways to attack and split into wide areas. So I don't think we read the game well, despite our issues. Despite our issues, I think we didn't read it well, and we may be overexposed Jorginho to that situation. I like to be fair and consistent, although I've always felt he's on the downturn, but there's a role for him in certain game states, and this wasn't one for him.
Yeah. I think that's also a fair analysis. So, want to start to turn the corner, but like Tim, the corner turns very naturally. Ethan Nwaneri, the news is he has a muscular injury, going to be out a couple of weeks. Kai may not be fit for Newcastle. I'm sorry, but like Leo, Jesus, Martinelli, there's just not enough goals.
Mm-hmm.
Sterling out. Saka, I'm going to tell you something. I don't know for sure we'll see Saka again this season. Very, very mixed on hamstring surgery, and we don't know the diagnosis and exactly the surgery, but it is also stuff you don't want to rush back. Depending on what's at stake, we might see him at the end of April, and it could be very important stuff that's at stake, which would be great. But I think we have to plan for life without him for the time being. And there's just not enough goals in the team. So I am not someone who thinks just buy anyone for God's sakes. But you can get to a situation, I said this on another pod, Tim, where you stop thinking about the ceiling. Stop thinking, buy a player so we can win the title, and start thinking, buy a player so the bottom doesn't fall out of the season. Because I don't want to be doomy. I'm not trying to be doomy. This team is very, very good, and we could still potentially contest the title. But another injury here or there, and we could find ourselves in a very tricky spot without the players we need to just make sure the bottom doesn't fall out. Let's remember, Liverpool hit 92 points 3 seasons ago. And 2 seasons ago, they were 5th because of injuries. There, but for the grace of God, go I. So let's talk about this. Are you in the camp of the club basically has to find something just from a numbers standpoint to protect not only the ceiling staying alive, but the floor not falling out, you know?
I think Mikel Arteta thinks that. And I think there's a lot of managing upwards type comments. You know what he said last week about we have the thinnest squad in the league. I mean, that's objectively, that's an absurd comment. We have nowhere near the thinnest squad in the league. But I don't think he thinks that either. But that's a pointed comment. That's a comment upstairs, is it not? And, you know, I guess even, and I think that's quite a blatant tell as well. But even little tells, like when he spoke about the Nwaneri injury and, you know, and like very downbeat about it. And, you know, I think we've lost him type thing, which is actually quite a dramatic way to announce essentially like a hamstring pull, which, don't get me wrong, is still a big problem for us because of how depleted we are. But it's like, it's quite dramatic, isn't it? And so yeah. I think he's clearly pushing, and I have to say the whole like thinnest squad in the league stuff, that feels pointing not just about January, maybe the summer as well. There was lots of reporting about kind of one in, one out and all of that, and not being able to do certain things until players like Nketiah were out of the building. And, you know, even to be fair, like Reece Nelson goes like half an hour after Sterling comes in. I don't think that was, they're both loan deals, so not like financial, but you know what I mean? There was a lot of that kind of one in, one out type stuff. And I think he's definitely pushing for something. And I think, to be honest, rightly so. I mean, that's his job as the manager. But also, I think the thing is for us, even before the Saka injury, we needed an attacker or two. There's probably almost certainly a couple of those guys who aren't going to be there next season. Maybe someone like Trossard's auditioning at the moment. Maybe it's kind of, all right, if you want a new contract, let's see what happens before the end of the season, and we'll see if you think, you know, you deserve one type thing. Maybe he's got his eyes elsewhere, I don't know. But the bottom line is we need more than one attacker anyway. So I think there is definitely justification to say, why not one now if we can do it? And I think it's I think everyone at the club understands we need that. Like, I think everyone understands that. I guess the question is, though, can the numbers work? Can the availability work? Because, like, I hate to say this because I know how people are going to react. Just because you want something, it doesn't mean it's there. basically.
It's this simple. Just buying anyone isn't an answer, because like having another player who's no better than what you've got, and now you have that player, and that player doesn't help you be good next season or the season after, like that's no good. And if you want to say a loan, we'd have to get rid of Neto to even do a loan, because you can only do 2 loans. So it's not easy. I've seen Douglas Luiz rumors. He wants out of Juve. I mean, that's not going to fix the goal scoring issue, but needs must. Clive, there are a lot of people who understandably feel the League Cup is very, very important for us right now. If the league maybe isn't possible, who knows with the FA Cup and the Champions League, but we're in a semifinal for the League Cup. I get it. Let's get a trophy. What it would mean to the team, especially in a down season where it's all going against us. And at the same time, no Ethan, no Sterling, no Saka, no Kai probably.
He's 50-50.
50-50. Mikel said, we just don't know. He hasn't been able to train. No Ben White. There's injuries all over the place, and I don't know what you do. So how are you approaching this game tomorrow? Like it's come so fast on the heels of 2 very tricky away fixtures, and now we have no one to pick. I mean, is it a case where he just has to pick the strongest 11 because they're the only ones available?
Who's available? You need to get some hot toddies in them, mate. Who's available? No. Right? So we don't know. It's an impossible question to answer, because Odegaard was available on Saturday, but let's be honest, he wasn't available. He was there out of duty, So we don't know who's available. I just want to see a fresh set of players. I've just seen a tweet come out saying he can't be far from Max Dowman being in this squad, and he just turned 15. Right, so
I assume he will make the matchday squad. I don't think he'll play, but I think he'll be in the matchday squad.
And that's where we are. So we have a decision to make, and this is a serious thing now. Let's be honest, it's a serious thing. I went for the attackers earlier on purpose, because I question them sometimes. I do, and we have. I've said this many times. I feel we have some generational players in our team, and they need their careers protected and enhanced, and their ambitions enhanced. And so we are duty bound to do that. And the areas of need, regardless of the situation at the moment, is at the top end of the pitch. And so we need to attack it. And I'm sure they are. Because if we can add up, so can they. So I'm sure they are. We've just got to stay patient and wait. These things it's not like, it's not quick. It's not quick to do these deals. Have to be patient and wait. But I do think it's very important. Sometimes things happen and you have a risk, you have a situation, and you have to react to it. And you have to react to that emergency. And we are close to an emergency situation right now. I don't know the timeline for Sterling. And for many people, Sterling's not the answer anyway. We just lost a 17-year-old and we're all concerned. Well, he shouldn't be. He should be just carrying the oranges, right? He shouldn't be part of our dreams.
Yep.
And it's just tough at the moment. It's really tough. Our skipper, we've barely seen him all season, really. Let's be honest. He had a dead cat bounce couple of games when he got back from injury, and he's not been right since for a little while. So these are major pillars at the top end of our team, and I don't see anything I can even get excited about. I don't see any rumor I can smash down because it's not correct. I don't see anything, and that worries me. Right, that worries me. And it's not a criticism of anybody. I just know it's required. No, it's really required. And I am a pragmatist. I'm conservative. I like to, when it comes to these buys, I like to think it through and do the right decision and make sure we don't get a situation where we have been historically a bunch of players that don't fit on too high wages. This is the new Arsenal Football Club in the Champions League, second or third favourites for the trophy. Let's not mess about. We got stuff to do. We got to do it. We need to do it really quickly.
You can't throw seasons away. By the same logic, though, you can't throw projects away. So, if I look at that Liverpool team that went from 92 points to 5th, the next season they challenged for the title, and this season they're probably going to win it. They didn't panic. They didn't change everything. They changed manager, but really it's the players organized around the core brilliance of Van Dijk and Salah. So, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I think anyone that's good enough to improve on this Arsenal is unlikely to be available in this window. Clive?
I'm just reading a quote from the press conference. Arteta said, today we had 7-8 players with us in training. and just had to fill the squad, which is unknown for tomorrow, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So if you're training with 7 or 8 players, you're just shaking out a bit of. You're on a warm down day, and we're back at it tomorrow, and we don't know who's going to be there.
It's crazy.
And
look, here's the funny thing. People be like, oh, boo-hoo, Spurs has an injury crisis. They do, and look at their results. They stink. Oh, United had injuries. They did. They're 14th. We're trying to win a title, and we're still theoretically in it. Like, I'm going to say 2 things right now. First thing I'm going to say is this. When you need 83 points to win a title, you can and should ride out injuries and referee decisions. When you have to hit 93 points, you can't. You can't have major injuries and decisions go against you to hit 93 points. There's just not enough room for error. If the title can be won on 83 points this season, I still think we can do it. If it's going to take 90, we're done. And the other thing I'll say is no one wants to hear excuses for why we won't win the league because the club have done things that I don't agree with. They think excuses mean the club have no culpability. But you can think the club have done things wrong and still believe that with these injuries and referee decisions, we would not win the league regardless. So for me, it is this simple. If the league can be won with low 80s points, if Liverpool can come back to the pack, I still like us to do it. But if they don't come back to the pack, I don't think any signings this past summer or this January are going to change it. I think if Saka doesn't come back till late April, there's no Saka player in the market this January. Let me disabuse you of that notion. And right now, I'll just say this. I want us to beat Newcastle and I want us to beat United in the Cups. To Clive's point, if there's 7 guys in training, you're just going to have to pick who's available. It's a lot of games right now at a really tricky time. I mean, the one good thing is we're in very good shape in the Champions League. So when those Champions League games come around, Girona away and what is it? It's Zagreb at home or something like that? Yeah. Is that right? Like, you'd like to think we'll just throw whoever out there and you think you could win it. But even if you don't, like, we could be okay. So I mean, that is a silver lining. But we got to get fit. If we don't get fit, this is just intellectual posturing. You don't win games with bad players, the wrong way to say it. You don't win games without top-end talent. We need our top-end talent fit. I think if I had to say the single biggest thing that could happen for us in the second half of the season right now, I'd say Odegaard coming back and being the Odegaard we know he can, because we've not seen that player to Clive's point this season. And I don't think without Saka and without that, I just don't think we have enough. So we'll see. The Newcastle game feels big. They're in very good form at the moment. They look very hale and hearty and ready to go. So we're catching them at a bad time. Then we got United, who just pulled something off away to one of their rivals who look like maybe they found themselves a bit. So it is going to be tricky, and we're going to have to get through it with the players we have. And we're going to constantly be doing this dance, bouncing between frustration when we can't do it because we don't have what we need, and recognizing that it's going to be hard to do with this group right now. We'll do more on transfers as the window heats up a bit. We'll get scouting videos going as soon as there's anyone to scout. Maybe we need to do Douglas Luiz, who we have scouted before. A lot of the players we're linked to, we've scouted before if you want to check that out on Patreon. So the scouting videos are still there. We'll leave it there for now, though. Instant reaction coming tomorrow, of course. Then we'll have an instant reaction for the game on Wednesday. And then we'll have an instant reaction for the game on Thursday and an instant reaction for the game on Friday. But no instant reaction for the game on Saturday, but back with instant reaction for the game on Sunday. So we play 12 times in 7 days or whatever it is. Thank you, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone, for being here. It's a lot to pull apart. Pulled in a lot of directions right now. But we hang in there. Still alive. We'll see where it goes. We love you. And we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Newcastle 0.